Thank you very much. My name is Macharia Munene. I'm Professor of History and International Relations at the United States International University in Nairobi. History is dynamic. It is through history that people get to know themselves, their character, and to develop ability to strategize and safeguard their interests. If people do not know their history, their background, the forces that have shaped them, they then tend to be shaped by other people. And the essence of being human is to perpetuate yourself and your kind, your interest, and not to perpetuate some other groups or interests at the expense of your own. Imperialism and colonialism are conquests. One people beating up on another people and imposing their ways of lives, of thinking, of doing anything, then only then do they feel happy. And they can talk about their empire. And that means that they have made other people believe in their own superiority. And that the right way to do things anytime is to do it the way of the conqueror. So colonialism was an exercise in imperial conquest. And to do that effectively, there were three instruments that were used. You had the soldiers with their guns and whatever else they did to beat people into submission. Then you had the administrators. Sometimes the soldiers became the administrators. And the administrator's job was to govern the conquered people in the way with the foreign rules and new laws that serve the interests of the conqueror, that is the colonial state. The third instrument were the missionaries. Their job was to soften the conquered, in this case the African, called the native. Once he's softened, he is then manipulable, and he can be acculturated into the ways of the conqueror. So, and to do that, the missionary had to convince the African, the conquered person, that everything about him is evil. Everything about him is devilish. Because the only true way is the way of the conqueror. When the white powers met at Berlin in 1884 and 85, and their purpose was to agree on how to claim territories in Africa without killing each other in Africa. That was the purpose. And they agreed on the rules that you go to a place, if there's a flag of a white power, you know it's taken. So go somewhere else, if it's not there, plant your flag and let everybody know. And then it's yours. But then to prove that it's yours, you have to have effective occupation. Effective occupation meant beating up people into submission. That's where the soldiers come in. And then once they are beaten, you have administrators, and then the missionaries to soften them. Now, the three of them working together were very effective. Let's say in Kenya, what became Kenya? Because by 1914, virtually every segment or section of Kenya, then the people in it had been beaten into submission. And they are beginning to imbibe the ways of the white man.
Chapter 9, Central Africa, Evidence from a Small State, the Kingdom of Kuba. We must not lose sight of what we are doing, the important points of what we have been doing, a partial view of the early history of the blacks, from the loss of their Egyptian homeland to the coming of the Europeans, has been presented through a summary study of a representative number of states, a continent-wide view of what happened to the whole by looking at typical situations, a people forever migrating, forever on the move, forever in flight from the threats of survival, a new location found, sites of relief and thanksgiving for a new breathing spell, and new efforts at reunification and state building all over again. But every decade of unsettled life, every decade of wandering over deserts, savannas, and through forest, every such decade was one of retrogression and disintegration, decades of decline. And no newly established state was able to reach the levels of achievements of the past before it was engulfed either by the Islamic East or the Christian West. This is what we have witnessed. No matter what black states was studied or in the region of Africa it was located. One of those wandering groups, unlike the Congolese and Angolans, began to migrate from the Atlantic seaboard before the whites arrived, was free from contacts with them much longer, and therefore founded a new nation that lasted much longer. The core group was made up of blacks who became known as the Bushongs. They were moving from place to place toward the interior and finally began to develop from the new state during the period when the white storm clouds were slowly rising in all directions. The 200 years between 1475 and 1675. Check the dates. The most critical in the history of blacks. It was during this period that the great noose of encirclement was completed and fixed, and the blacks of Africa found themselves hemmed in and threatened from all directions, from the north, from the east, from the west, and finally from the south. The white man's march toward world conquest and world domination was in full swing. This most critical period in the history of the race, I say, was such because this closing in on the blacks from all directions was the beginning of the final death blows to what remained of their own civilization. There were dire consequences in terms of their psychological impact on Africans under perpetual danger. A new fatalism emerged that carried the sentence of ultimate doom to the minds of thousands. Some gave up resistance to anything, including a resistance to slavery and resistance to barbarism that engulfed those who either went backwards or stood still for mental atrophy. Some tried to save themselves by serving the invaders, because even if it meant enslaving or killing their own people, some believed that because the white man came in big ships with big earth-shaking guns, surely they must be gods of the world. Others saw no sense in trying to maintain the traditional brotherhood and attempts at unity in the face of such overwhelming odds. Rather, the drive must be to secure the guns and ammunition from the whites, even if it meant ceaseless wars to secure the slaves the white demanded, secure them by warring on their own kinsmen in neighboring territories. And still others resolved never to yield, to move and keep on moving rather than to submit, to rebuild and keep rebuilding, never giving up, and to fight for unity as the only route to survival. Voluntary unity, if possible. Unity by force, if all else failed. These last others were the ones who had the spirit that accounts for the survival of the most bruised and battered of the races of mankind. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, continuing my reading of Chancellor Williams's book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, Chapter 9, Central Africa, Evidence from a Small State. And if we're taking account to what I was just reading in the video that played in the beginning, we're talking about domination, control, how to take over another group of people, arms, politics, and religion. That's what we're talking about today. Arms, politics, and religion. 3 tools outsiders used to destroy Black civilizations. But we're also going to talk about how African people played a part in the enslavement of other African people. And see, that's a reality that we have to come to grips with, right? Because we had a number of African people who were good, and we had a number of African people who were not good. And the number of those African people who were not good, they submitted to white supremacy. As you can see, I was reading earlier, they wanted to secure the slaves for the whites and be involved in the slave trading with the whites, like Tipu Tip, right? So we find out that slave trading of Africans by Africans did happen on the continent of Africa. But it still all goes back to the transatlantic slave trade that was happening, right? Because if it wasn't for the transatlantic slave trade, those slaves or prisoners of war would have been sold to another group of African people who would have treated them like human beings. And they would have served for a while, indentured servitude, and when been able to go back to their life. Their whole lives would not have been uprooted and taken from them, the same way it was in the transatlantic slave trade. So there are differences. Now, I'm not saying that to excuse the behavior of those Africans, because those Africans are sellouts and they need to be called out. They need to be recognized as sellouts. There are a lot of William O'Neills out there. What we're finding out is the sellout Black is not new. It's not an American invention. Sellout Blacks have always existed. We've been reading this. We've been reading about this whole book. It's always talked about a group of Black people who supported the oppressors. Arms, politics, religion. Use the arms to take them over. Use the politics and religion to soften them up. The missionaries come in under the guise of God and bringing peace, bringing you a new worldview, a new God, because my God is greater than your God, and I can show you what my God can do. And then bring in the politics and get involved in the local politics of the people that they're looking to conquer. Remember, this is a slow process. This process could last 20 to 30 years. The taking over by the missionaries and the political upheaval. And then the guns come in. And when the guns come in, it's all over, because as the gentleman said in the beginning, the politics and the religion have softened them up, and now they're ready to be conquered. So sit back, relax, put your seatbelts on. Remember to like this video, comment, subscribe, share, like, man. Y'all hit that like button. Please hit that like button and get in those comments. That's how we help these videos be seen by more people. That's how we help the channel continue to grow. Remember, the growth of this channel is just not about me. It's about the community that I am serving, my Tallahassee community. And I want to be able, excuse me, I want to be able to serve as many other communities as possible. Many people have asked me about streaming my online classes. Right now, I just need more resources to be able to stream my online classes. And not only that, to be able to reach more children. On the Shoulders of Giants is something that I built to reach as many people as possible. So I need your help by liking this video, comment, subscribing, hitting that support me on Patreon. There's a Cash App. You can hit the super like button on this video. All the different ways to support on the Shoulders of Giants, support the children that I pour into. So I appreciate all of you. Help a brother out. So let's jump back into it. Page 238, this first paragraph. Such a representative groups were the Bushongs. This their record will show. As the Portuguese slave raid spread, the Bushongs moved inland from the Atlantic, enlisting new followers as they moved or temporarily stopped. They were headed towards the Congo region. Fleeing from the whites was not the only problem for them, as it was not the only problem for millions who had trampled over Africa before them. So when they had settled in the lower Kawango early in the 16th century, their immediate foes were the fierce Jaga warriors, a roaming tribe that seemed to be more interested in raids of destruction than in settling anywhere. They were destroyers, not builders, and they were set on a course to prevent others from settling and building. And while large groups of them did split off did split off from the main body to merge with others and form states. They seem to be nothing more nor less than bloodthirsty barbarians who engaged in warfare for the sheer thrill of warfare. These eventually opened war against the Bushong state that was forming over a wide area along the Kawango. Under relentless and savage attacks by the Jaga warriors, the Bushongs were forced to retreat along the Kasai and Sanguru rivers, many groups splitting off from the main body and going in different directions. The main body, led by its chief, Woot, entered the plain of Layul in Kasai and began the formation of a little-known state during the third quarter of the 16th century. It is precisely because it was small and generally unheard of that I selected it for a summary today. There was another reason. It was typical of hundreds of other small black states, which, unlike the world-renowned Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, the migrating blacks had built all over Africa, but what seemed to be so significant to the conquering Europeans that they were swept away, their people scattered with no vanishings to seek out the oral historians to hear how things came to be. What was achieved or failed to be achieved before death came to their society at last. The little kingdom of Kuba, then having its history recaptured, will be telling their story, also telling it substantially as it was in all fundamental particulars. The Bushong, or Central Organizing Group, was allied in a federation of voluntary kindred groups and other tribes, numbering 18 at the outset. The Kwa, the Kete, were indigenous. The Kwa, as previously stated, having lived there since the world began, and the Kwa, also known as the Twa, or the pygmies of the Twa and Booty. So these are the people who are also derogatorily referred to as the pygmies. So when I'm talking about the Kwa, I'm going to use the name the Kwa or Twa. I'm not going to use the name pygmy, but I just want y'all to know who I'm talking about.